What's up everyone, Jason Turley here, back with another video. Today I'll be showcasing how to crack WinZip and 7-zip passwords using a tool called Hashcat. And if you don't want to stick around or sit through for the technical explanation or the walkthrough, I do have all of the commands I will be running listed here. So you can just screenshot this and run this if you're in a hurry and you just want the exact commands I ran on how to crack these things. And in this walkthrough, I'm going to show you how to do it from start to finish using a simple password like password 123, what we see here. And then I'll also be using a more complex password where we know a part of it. We know the beginning. We know it starts with apple, maybe the name of the company or our favorite fruit, but we don't know the last 5 characters. We have a reason to believe that it's a digit, but we don't know what 5 digits this could be. So I'll be utilizing Hashcat masks and showing how you can use those to crack passwords. So with that long introduction out of the way, you see I've opened up my file explorer and I have a single file here. I can double click on it and it opens up in this text editor. It just says, please subscribe. So we're going to take this and we are going to create an archive. This might be how a regular user does it. When I do 7-zip, I'll be showcasing how to do this through the command line. But for now, we're going to be using the GUI applications, just the built-in file explorer that a regular user might utilize. So right click, scroll down to create archive, enter what you want to name this. I'm just going to name this protected, and we see the file extension here. If we click on this menu, it gives us a plethora of different options, tar, gunzip, what have you, but we're going to leave it simple as just .zip. It doesn't say it here, but this is a WinZip file, and I'll show you how to verify that in a second. Click on other options and we see this field here that allows us to enter some kind of password if you want to be password protected. And we do, because it's usually good to password protect zip files and archives. So we're going to use the weak password of password 123 with the P being capital, and we're going to create it. We see it opens up in our file explorer here. If we double click on it, we can see what the contents of it. We can see that it does contain file.zip, but it has this little lock next to it, this icon saying, hey, you can't access this unless you know the password. So we double click here and we try to enter the password, but we don't know what it is. We're pretending like this cheat sheet is not here. So we forgot the password, but all hope is not lost. Hit OK. All right, that's the wrong password. And we'll exit out of this. Next, we'll be opening up our terminal. You can see I have a little working directory here, my YouTube demo folder. And if we wanted to try to unzip this from the command line, we can do the same thing. It doesn't work because the zip version on this Kali Linux is different than WinZip. But that's besides the point. So how can we go about cracking this file? So first we need a file hash. We just have the actual zip file. And if we run the file command on it, we see it's a zip archive data, at least version 5.1. And we can run head on it just to look at the first few bytes. We see it's PK3, which really doesn't mean anything to us at this point. But we can use a utility called zip2john, and we'll hit enter there if we want to read the command line options. So zip2john is a utility that should come prepackaged by default in Kali Linux, which is the operating system I'm using. And if you do not have it for whatever reason, you can run sudo apt upgrade to upgrade the different packages that you have installed, because John the Ripper, which is a different password cracking tool, is installed by default, but it might not have all the utilities you need. And versions of this do exist on Windows as well. However, I just like using Linux, especially Kali Linux, for these kind of things, just because everything's packaged together by default, and heck, Linux is just more fun to use anyway. So we're going to run our command zip2john and then the name of the password protected file, hit enter, and you see it outputs the name of the archive as well as all the file contents. There's only one file in here, file.txt, but if we had several, it would list those as well. And then it has the hash. And then again, it lists out the file and then the file name and the archive again for whatever reason. So that's good and that's great. So let's redirect this to a folder or another file. I'll just call this zip hash and we can cat that out just to confirm. Now let's try to crack this with Hashcat. Opening up the man page, what is Hashcat? I've been talking about it all this time. It is an advanced CPU-based password cracking utility. The syntax for it's pretty simple. You run Hashcat, any options that you might want to specify, as well as the hash file, and then the word list or the dictionary or the mask. So paging down here, we're going to skip by all of these options here because there is a nice table at the bottom. Here we go. We'll come back to the built-in character set in a second, in our second example. What we're concerned with for now is the hash type. We need to tell Hashcat what kind of hash it will be cracking. This is a little bit different than John the Ripper. You can specify what kind of hash John the Ripper needs to crack, but it will do its best to try to guess it by default. But Hashcat is not like that. You do need to specify what kind of hash you want to crack. So we can see the different options here. We see NTLM for Windows hashes. We see SHA-512, so on and so forth. All the hash types aren't listed in the man page, so it's not always the best place to look. A better resource is just going to hashcat.net. And if we scroll down here, we see the options. And it should have them all here. So let's do a Control F for zip. Okay, we see 7-zip, PK-zip. So there are a lot of zip options. Maybe I can make this bigger and easier to read. I have no idea why there's so many PK-zip options. If anyone knows, I would love to know in the comments. But we are working with a WinZip file. So we're going to grab this, this mask ID. And now we're going to start building out our Hashcat command. So Hashcat, specify the mode, 13,600. Now we need the hash file, which we save this as zip hash. And now we need the actual word list that we want to use. We're just going to use rockU.txt, classic, simple. It contains a lot of hashes, about like 14 million passwords. Smash the enter key. And we get this error, signature unmatched, and then we see some of our like hash, some of the text in parentheses. So what's going on here? If we go back to our zip hash, remember the utility we ran is zip to John, which is a utility for John the Ripper. So this output with the like metadata, with the folder name and the file name, that's only useful for John the Ripper. It's not useful for Hashcat at all. Hashcat only wants what's wrapped in these $signs right here. And if we don't know that, if we're not sure what exactly Hashcat is looking for in the syntax, well, we can go to the other resource on this page for example hashes. Let's fix that. So if we scroll down, we see the different hash types again. So MD5, and we see an example of what MD5 actually looks like. If I Control F for WinZip, we see here the mode that we specified, and we see the exact type of hash it is looking for. So this is a very useful resource, and I'll leave a link to this in the description below. So what we want is just what is in between these $signs. Everything else is for John the Ripper. And just to prove my point again, or prove my point further, we can run John the Ripper again with the rockU word list against this zip hash, and we see that it works. We see that John the Ripper successfully cracks this hash. But if we want to use exclusively Hashcat, then we need to edit that file a bit. So let's open it up in Vim or any other text editor, and let's remove everything before this $sign, as well as all this junk at the end. Save and exit. Hit the up arrow to go back to our Hashcat command from earlier instead of retyping it. Smash the enter key, and we see that Hashcat is running, and the output looks a lot different than before. It doesn't error out right away. One thing I don't love about Hashcat is this big wall of text. It is a little bit confusing. It is kind of jarring. We see here, session Hashcat. Okay, I know that I ran Hashcat. The status is cracked. It once again just tells us it's WinZip, and we see the hash target that it used, but where is the actual password? It's nowhere to be found here. It's actually in the middle right here. we see the hash, a colon, and then we see the actual password. I have no idea why Hashcat chooses to output the password like this. It's not, it's not intuitive exactly that it would be right there, but we see that we successfully cracked this zip file. So then you'd go here, right click, extract here, that's fine, and then slam in the password. So you might be saying, well, if we're using zip2john and we're getting the output in John the Ripper format, why not just use John the Ripper? Why even bother with Hashcat in the first place if John the Ripper would work just as well? Well, I'm glad you asked. John the Ripper, in my experience, is great for simple passwords or things that you know would be in a word list. But if you want to do something more complex, and I'll show some examples of that, for like this password, we know the password is the name of the company, Apple, but then it's like 5 random digits. You could create a word list on your own, or you could use Hashcat. So if we come back here, we need to find the help. Ask. Here we go. Built-in character sets. So Hashcat allows you to specify, I don't know the best way to say it. They use the term file masks, but I don't think that's like a great term. If you know, for example, one of the digits, one of the characters is a lowercase letter, you can specify that with $L. If you know it's uppercase, you can specify that with $U, so on and so forth for digits or different hex values, different symbols. If you know there's going to be an exclamation point at the end, you can specify that with a symbol. Another great resource is this Hashcat page on mask attacks. I'm not going to go through everything in every example and every use case, but I do recommend reading this if you're interested or you're a bit more confused on different mask types and mask options. But I believe it lays it out pretty well and pretty easy to follow along. So if you keep scrolling down all the way to the bottom, all the way, we're going to be using these examples where we see there's a company name, in our case, Apple, because why not? And then 5 random digits at the end. We don't know what they are, and we can notate that with a $D. So first and foremost, we need to actually create that zip file. I said we would be using 7-zip in this case. So let me just copy paste from my example. Grab this here, slam that in. So the options 7-zip, it's not native on Linux. You will have to apt install this. A, to add a file to an archive. I'm doing TAC-P to specify this password, Apple, and then just 5 random digits that I came up with out of nowhere, as well as the name of the archive. I'm going to name this encrypt.7zip. And then once again, we're just going to password protect the file.txt that we saw from earlier. So smashing the enter key, it prints out all this and everything is okay. That's comforting. That's good to know. If we do an ls, we can do file on encrypt, and we see that it is a 7-zip file. And if we try to extract it, 7-zip extract encrypt, it will ask for a password. So we don't know what it is. So exit out of this. Once again, we used zip2john for the zip file, for the WinZip file. In this case, we're going to use 7zip2john. So it is pretty nifty. It is cool that John the Ripper has all these utilities that are built in or easy to find, both on Linux and Windows. If you're curious for like more, you can just look at LSL of user share John, and I like to pipe that into less. And you can see all the different like conversion hashes that John has, all the conversion algorithms. We see one for Bitcoin to John, blockchain to John. What else? I know there's SSH to John for like SSH private keys, but I'm getting a little bit off track. So let's cat this out. Once again, we see that John likes to append the name of the archive, the name of the folder, as well as the like entire hash. So just like before, we're going to edit this and we're going to remove that beginning because we don't want the name of the file or the folder for Hashcat. Hashcat does not like that. So just like before, we need to specify Hashcat and then the mode. So going back to the example hashes, we can Control F for 7-zip. And we see it here. We see the mode is 11,600. We can also peek at the example hash while we're here. We see that it starts with $7Z. And then what does it end with? It ends with just some digits. So confirm ours is like that. Cat 7-zip hash. Yep, it starts with 7Z and then it ends with just the digits. So we know our hash format is correct and we're not going to get any type of error there. Hashcat mode 11,600 on 7-zip. And now we need to specify a word list. You can see here I'm using Z shell, which it does point out the commands I ran previously. We see that I've included some type of mask. If I hit enter, it's going to error because I don't actually have that file created. So let's make it now. Let's make something called my mask. You can name this anything. I just like naming it this for simplicity. So we know the password starts with Apple. So let's type that in. And now we know it's 5 random digits. So just like before in this example that we saw, we can be lazy and we can just copy and paste this. If we thought for whatever reason, it's not just digits, but we think it's Apple and then maybe some type of symbol or some type of like uppercase letter, we can add that here as well. But we know it's Apple with 5 digits. So let's save and quit out of that. And now let's run our Hashcat command. Yeah, just like that. If you want to be extra like verbose, extra certain, you can specify attack mode is 3. And if we come over here where it lists out the different attack modes, where it's at, we can specify that it's brute force. I don't believe it's necessary, but let's roll with it, see what happens. Smash the enter key. We see that Hashcat is starting, it's generating the tables, and it gives us this option here, S for status, P to pause it. I'm not really sure what bypass or checkpoint are, but let's hit S to look at the status of the current command. And once again, it loves printing out this big wall of text. We see that it is running. It hasn't cracked yet. It hasn't exhausted itself. If you see exhausted here in the status line, that means Hashcat finished and it was not able to find a suitable word in the word list, or it wasn't able to crack it. So if you ever see status equals exhausted, you're out of luck. Hashcat wasn't able to crack it. Back to the drawing board, either specify a different word list or a different mask or both. So we see here that it's currently on 224 out of, what is that, 100,000. So it's going to try 100,000 different options. And if you look down here at candidates, this is all the candidates that it's currently trying in parallel. So we see, let me make this nice and big. There we go. Hopefully this is easier to see. So we see the name of the company, Apple, and then we see the 5 digits that it generated at random, 32,123, all the way through this number that I'm not going to read out. If we hit S again to look at the status, we see that it changed. So it hasn't cracked it yet, but this number jumped up to 1,728. So it does have a long way to go. So, hey, unfortunately, that's the nature of password cracking. It's not always going to solve it in the blink of an eye, especially if it's not something simple, something easy like password 123. So this goes to show, if you know a little bit about the password, if you know the company name, or you know perhaps the length of the password, it's easy to trim this stuff down and make it a little bit quicker. But it's just one of those things where sometimes you just have to run the password cracker and then go off and do something else while it runs in the background. So this will take a while. I'm not going to showcase it cracking it because it's going to take too long. And I think you guys understand the purpose. You understand the point. Once again, I'll bring up these commands here. So these are the different things that we ran, just to summarize. We started with a very, very basic WinZip password of just password 123 with the P being capital. And we converted that. We were able to deduce a hash from that with zip to John. and we output that into zip underscore hash. We had to clean it up a little bit for Hashcat. We had to remove the beginning, the ending file names, and the folder names. You can either crack that with John, or if you do clean it up, you can do it with Hashcat if you prefer that. Whatever word list suits your heart. I just like rockyou.txt. And if you've never used it before, or if you've never peeked at it, let's do that now. I like to run the word list command, and that spits me out here. So if I do an ls, we can see all the word lists I have on the system, with rockyou being right here. If this is your first time using Kali Linux, you're not going to have rockyou.txt. What you'll have is a archive called rockyou. I think it's like gz or like tar.gz or something like that. txt.gz. Essentially, you're going to have a gzipped file, and you need to gunzip it. I don't have that currently. I already unzipped it and then removed the archive, but you will need to run this command or something similar. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I think it's rockyou.txt.gz, but I'm sure you guys will correct me in the comments, which I always appreciate. So if we just open up, if we do a word count, tag L on rockyou, we can see how many lines there are, and each line is its own password. So what is this? Yeah, 14,344,392. And if we open this up and less, we can see some of the passwords. So it's sorted basically from weakest, like the most common password, all the way down to some more obscure passwords. And if we want, we can set number. Set, oh my goodness, what is going on? Oh, I'm not in Vim. Vim, rockyou. It's going to take a while to open. There we go. So now we have line numbers if you like that, but we can see the simple passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, password, I love you, rockyou. If I go all the way to the bottom, we see it gets a little bit weird. Like what exactly is all this? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what these special characters are down here. But yeah, this is the contents of this folder. This is the word list that we've been using. It's very common in CTFs and capture the flags and pen testing and stuff like that. So if you know, for whatever reason, the folder has a weak password, it's not a bad idea to run rockyou against this. And you can also specify the mask that we saw before. So we only showcased a few of the attack modes here, but Hashcat gets really deep into it. You can really customize it. You can specify a word list and a mask. We only did a single character, like a single string, like apple and then a mask, but you can specify like an entire word list. I'm not sure what association is. I need to read up more on that. You can specify whether or not you want to crack it on your computer's CPU, the central processing unit, the brain of the computer, or if you want to use the GPU, the graphic processing unit, which is typically stronger than the CPU. So if you know you have something like a very good GPU, a good NVIDIA GPU, you could specify that here. But I'm just on my laptop, so I leave it on the default CPU. So I think I blabbered enough. Let's see if it ever cracked this hash. And it doesn't look like it. It's only less than 8% done, and it's been running for a few minutes now, 6 minutes. And it's estimated to run for another hour. So I'm not going to sit here and wait, and you guys aren't either. But essentially, that's how you do it. So yeah, that's two very common archives, WinZip as well as 7-zip. That's how I did it. I'd love to know how you guys did it in the comments down below. You can use John the Ripper or Hashcat. Once again, I'm using a Kali Linux virtual machine. Free to download, easy to install. It's just a bit easier to use these things inside of here instead of Windows. And if you see here in this top right hand corner, like all these waves essentially, what is this? This is my CPU usage. So my computer is working overtime trying to crack these hashes. We see it's at 85%, and we see some spikes up to 90, and it gives it in like this this chart. So I don't know if you can hear it, but my computer fans sound like a jet engine right now. So this is pretty resource intense. If I was trying to crack these hashes as well as like run some type of Nmap file scan, I'm going to run out of resources pretty quickly and I'm slowing my computer down. Wonder, can I sort by percent? Yeah, if I sort by CPU percentage, you can see Hashcat in the top. It's peaked at over 100. Wow, 136, 134. So it's really eating up all these resources trying to do password cracking. So I think that's it. I think I've rambled enough. Hopefully this is useful. I'll put this up one more time in case you guys want to take a screenshot and use this for your own reference. But there we have it. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully it makes sense and it makes password cracking a little bit easier, because I did put out a video how to do this using Windows John the Ripper a while ago, and it did lead to a lot of confusion. I'm sorry I can't answer everyone's questions in the comments. I do read all my comments, but it's kind of too much to answer. And to be honest, a lot of times I'm answering the same question of like no file found. If there's no file path found, then there's some type of error with what you're naming the file and what you specify in the command line. So yeah, just double check if you're getting no such error or no file found. Make sure you're entering the correct file path. Ooh. That's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, take it easy and see you guys in the next video.